Hello, my friends. This is episode 278 of Stand Up. Joining me today, former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirschner and Dr. Dale Okorodudu and Micah Autry talk about their new documentary, Black Men in White Coats. My name is Pete Dominick. I'm a white man in a shed. Time to stand up with me right now. Yeah, we are off, and I am happy you are joining me. So happy to have you here. I'm standing in the shed on a cold winter night, looking out at the snow falling, leaving a blanket of beautiful white fluffy snow on my lawn, and enjoying this moment. I love winter and grew up in upstate New York, just outside Syracuse, skiing and then snowboarding, and being the son of a ski instructor of 44 years. My dad taught skiing, so winter brings with it a lot of joy, great memories, and I love to be out there and being in it. I haven't skied powder in over 10 years, I realize, so I'm looking forward to maybe taking a day off if we get a big dump, as someone used to say. Thank you for joining me on my news-free week, meaning I'm not doing the news at the top of the show this week. I need a break from the news. I couldn't stop doing it and covering it and thinking about it until Joe Biden was in the White House. He is now in the White House, and Donald Trump doesn't have Twitter, and that is great. I know that there are things going on, and I have not read the headlines this week. I'm just trying to stay a little bit further away from the day-to-day Twitter and headlines and news stories that I dig deep into each and every day and share them with you every single podcast during the week, because it's good for your mental health, and also trying to use the time that I spend on the news segment working on some other initiatives this week. So it's not really time off. It's time spent differently. Having some great conversations with several of you about being self-employed and entrepreneurship and media, and what might change about the show at any time, now or ever. Always want to hear your ideas. I was talking to my friend Jason Moe down in Louisiana tonight, and he was just talking about having me suggesting that I interview more listeners about their lives and learn what they've learned, and I think that's a really great idea. I'd love to do more of that. Maybe the Friday show is listeners and helps build the community. So I'm thinking about that. But what are your ideas? What would you like to hear that might be a little different? I've got right now scheduled for tomorrow Wajid Ali and Jared Yates Sexton, which is going to be a fantastic tomorrow, Thursday episode 279. I think that'll make it. But who else would you like to hear together? What kind of panels might I put? What would be a powerhouse panel of people that you know I've had on the show, or that I haven't, that you'd like to hear a discussion with, and maybe even join it live? All kinds of things we can do. I want to do a live show on YouTube pretty soon with, more elements of comedy and news and life in general. There's all kinds of things I want to do from the shed. I love being here. I love being with my kids. A couple of you have suggested maybe I'm going to get burnt out and I'm not spending enough time with my family. And I really appreciate your thoughtfulness on that and understanding and agreeing, I think, in terms of what my values are about time spent work and family and that balance. But I will say to those of you who have been so thoughtful about that, don't miss out time with your kids. They don't want to hang out with me. I mean, my daughters are 13 and 16, and they are in the house pretty much all day, every day, going to school on the computer. By the way, they just lie in their beds. They just lie there in their beds with their laptops open and get A's. And while some kids are really struggling, and younger kids, I think it's so much harder for. My daughters are teenagers, and it's a weird time for everybody in terms of how our lives have changed and how we're living and how we're going to school and how we're working. But I love being in the shed. And my daughters don't necessarily want to do too much with me. I'm trying to get them both out on the mountain with me and take them skiing. But even that is fraught with danger and not just about flying down a mountain on a couple of boards. I'm talking about COVID as well. So it's just a time in my life where the girls have their wings and they're flying, they're flapping them, and they're doing their thing, and that's exactly what the plan was and what we set them up for. And so while we try to have as much time as we can together, hang out, watch a movie, eat dinner, and there's not a lot of places to go to or things to do. So I run into their rooms constantly all day and force conversations on them, and as well as in the car. And I got to say, I mean, that's what I love about the remote learning and my working from home. We're all here all the time. And sure, we argue and have problems as a result of that. But for the most part, I'm psyched that they're here. I love to have my kids around me. And while they would love to be out with their friends, they really can't be. And so I like that part of the pandemic, the quarantine, the remote learning, whatever you want to call it, and the fact that I work out here in the shed. So I do get a lot of time with my kids because they're home so much and they're forced into being with me. But by the way, those of you who have all kinds of different interests and hobbies, I'm always open to trying to develop those with the girls. And we do obviously have a great relationship with both of them, but I do wish there were a thing, an activity that we could do more of. And I've tried it all, but and I'll never stop trying and making that try to happen because I love these two humans, and I love when the four of us are all together. So as much of that as I can make happen, I'm always open to hearing your advice and how you've done that with your family. So send your suggestions my way, and then I share them with others, how they've worked for me. I've always done that. So thank you very much. But there's just not a lot of stuff to do. So I'm out here working away in the shed and loving it, really loving it. And that's the end of today's opening. Just wanted to share with you some personal things, and thank you for listening to the podcast. Those of you that are listening on the Patreon app, please listen on the Apple Podcast app, or if you don't use Apple, Spotify, or any other, but don't listen to the show on the Patreon app. Somebody made this point to me because the statistics then don't go to Apple Podcasts and then potential advertisers and just those numbers that you need to get more ears on your podcast. So if you want more people in this community listening to the program and be able to support me, then absolutely listen to the show on Apple Podcasts and then give it a rating. The ratings, the number of ratings really matters a lot. If you've never given this show a rating on Apple Podcasts, please throw that on your to-do list. That would be huge. Write something real nice and original and thoughtful about what the show means to you, why you listen, and anything else you want. All right. Oh, and give it 5 stars. You got to give the 5 stars. Oh, I hate doing all that. I hate the promotion and talking about that, but that's part of it. Part of promoting. You can't be one of these people who's like, I just want to talk into the microphone and have people listen and appreciate and respect what I'm doing. No, you actually have to promote your work as well. You can't be a lazy, arrogant bastard. I know a few people like that, and it doesn't work. Okay, let's get to my first guest. He is former federal prosecutor who is now a legal contributor to MSNBC and hosts his own YouTube channel, which is a massive hit. Just put Glenn Kirschner's name into YouTube and go subscribe to his YouTube channel. You can support him on Patreon now as well. And follow him on Twitter at Glenn Kirschner2. We had a great conversation, as we always do. We've become really good friends. I genuinely like and respect Glenn and appreciate how good he is at explaining all of these issues and how passionately opinionated he is on what he perceives. And I generally agree as to why justice matters and what justice is in the United States of America. And we had a great conversation. So here we go. Glenn Kirschner, the Kirschner Report. All right, it's been like weeks since I checked in with the great Glenn Kirschner, but you don't have to depend on me because you can check out his YouTube page that I just told you about, watch his videos every single day. You're a little OCD about it, apparently, right? Like you've been posting videos, like 10, 15-minute videos every day for over a year.
Yeah, every day since last May. I took one day off for a family emergency, and otherwise I'm up every day usually it's with the Trump crime du jour or the Bill Barr abuse of law or whatever. And, I've had a lot of material.
Yeah. So that's great. And we all love them and they get hundreds of thousands of views usually. And I wonder, I did want to ask you just like a little behind the scenes thing. Like, what are your fans, listeners, viewers say to you? Like, what is there any kind of general consensus on why they love what you are doing? I mean, I have my opinions, but what do you hear from people?
So they say a couple of things. Mainly, they say you don't talk like a lawyer, which I take as an enormous compliment. Because, I mean, growing up, in the gutters of Jersey, I never really felt like a lawyer, even after I got a law degree. I just kind of feel like I'm talking with everybody sitting around my kitchen table. And if you can break the legal issues down to something, you never talk down to your audience, but something that is understandable, digestible, and rather than just rehash what's going on, I think they like that I give them the issue, I put it in the larger context, and then I talk about, okay, what do we do about it? Let's, get some practical fixes that we can actually work on. Right. So they like that. And the other thing they like is, we're pushing some projects for full citizen engagement in government, right? That's why we have the Citizens Brigade of Court Watchers. And we're going to train citizens, no legal education required, to go into the courts, watch the Mitch McConnell not qualified judges. We're going to train them on what to look for, provide them the 2-page judicial complaint form that you can find on uscourts.gov. And we are going to just paper the misconduct to death by the Mitch McConnell not qualified judges. So we've got projects up and running.
Who's we? Like, who's doing that?
Team Justice. This is me, and this is the people that have gravitated toward Team Justice.
Well, why is that necessary? Because I thought that would be the job. Is that because there's not enough local reporters and even legal background reporters to cover these lower courts? Or why is it necessary that you have kind of this civilian core group of people watching these judges and watching what goes on in these courtrooms?
Because there are so many courtrooms and so few journalists. Journalists don't just go sit in and watch the run-of-the-mill routine cases. And that's where judges feel most comfortable to act up. Pete, 30 years in courtrooms, do you know how much judicial misconduct I saw? And when it was egregious enough, I wrote it up, I got the transcript, I reported it up the chain to the U.S. attorney or over to the Department of Justice, and we tried to act on it, right? But we couldn't do all of that. That wasn't our job. That was like a little side hobby that I had as a prosecutor. So we're going to train the civilians to go into the courts and do this because, journalists don't sit around in courtrooms to hear run-of-the-mill stuff.
So if people want to sign up for that, is there a place to join to learn more about it?
Well, so on Patreon, not to plug Patreon, but that's where we have our core Team Justice members proper. We have a 2-hour Zoom session every night where we talk about these
every
issues.
Night?
I'm sorry, every week.
Oh my God!
Sunday night,
who the hell are you?
We brainstorm, we put it together, and so that's the best place to kind of plug into Team Justice, and then you'll be kept abreast and included on all these projects. So can anybody just go to not any courtroom, but the courtrooms that you're talking about with these federal judges? Is that just part of our right? The Constitution guarantees everybody's right to a public trial. You're not allowed to exclude unless there are national security interests at stake. And then we have to jump through all sorts of hoops to actually lock the courtroom doors to exclude the public. But that is done in 0.0001% of the cases. So these are all public hearings. Every single court hearing is a public hearing. And there are 94 federal judicial districts, but there aren't that many federal judges. And there are even fewer that were rated not qualified by the American Bar Association that Mitch McConnell then crammed down our throats. Those are the ones we're going to focus on first. So you're looking, okay, got it. And when you said earlier that throughout your career, several times that you reported some kind of misconduct, are you talking about on behalf of the overseeing judge? I'm talking about judges engaging in misconduct from the bench. Frankly, you're going to know it when you see it, the way they treat the parties. If you listen to what the prosecutor and the defense attorney say, they're going to out the misconduct. They're going to object to it. They're going to preserve the objection so they can raise it again on appeal. It's not that hard to spot judicial misconduct. And not all judges do it, but ones that were rated not qualified, they weren't rated not qualified for nothing. Right. They're going to act up because they're going to have what we call black robe-itis. You put on the black robe, You think you're, just two rungs above God himself, and you act like a fool. And then you need to be held accountable.
Is it weird that I own and wear one of those judges' black robes around my house?
Don't ask, don't tell. Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah.
Pete.
Is it weird that even though I wear it, my family, my wife and daughters don't seem to give me any more respect or authority? Because that's what I'm going for. And is it too much that I carry
I'm married with children, so yeah, I feel you.
Is it too much that I carry a gavel? I'm yelling "Justice Matters" all the time, and they just stare at me like a freak. I'm like, do not follow Kirschner on the YouTube and the Twitter? Speaking of which, you're using this hashtag TCC, Trump Crimes Commission. Is that yours?
Yeah, I came up with that. I think somebody actually registered the domain for me.
Huh.
So, Eric Swalwell, Congressman Swalwell, was one of the first ones to call for a presidential crimes commission. I had been calling it the Trump Crimes Commission. I was actually on a town hall with Congressman Swalwell not too long ago. He did a Team Justice town hall, which was
awesome.
very kind of him to invite me. And I said, Congressman, I know you call it the Presidential Crimes Commission, and I call it the Trump Crimes Commission. I said, you are much more diplomatic, much more politic than I am. But you know what? When you say Presidential Crimes Commission, I think we all know which president you're talking about.
Yeah, good point. But no matter what you call it, whether it's Presidential Crimes Commission, Trump Crimes Commission, describe what you want there to be, what this commission would be, and it would seem from at least your tweets that you are growing impatient. And I want to. So what is it, and why does it seem like you're growing impatient that it has not been officially formed?
Yeah, I am growing impatient, and I almost regretted sending today's tweet where I said, will somebody just lock up this mope already? We've got, in my 30 years as a prosecutor, Pete, I don't think I ever had a criminal case as strong on the evidence as some of the crimes that Donald Trump committed. So, yeah, I shouldn't be impatient because Merrick Garland has not even arrived as Attorney General yet. Actually, a friend of mine, Monty Wilkinson, was just made the acting Attorney General, and people are already sniping at him. I worked with him at the DC office. He's a good man. He's a placeholder until Merrick Garland gets there. So that's when I think we're going to start to see investigations proper into the crimes of Trump and company, his executive branch officials, his family members, members of Congress in the insurrection and otherwise. So I need to cool my jets a little bit. But we, the people, have been abused for 4 years by a runaway criminal administration. So I'm a little impatient to get the criminal justice ball rolling. What I envision the Trump Crimes Commission to be is a huge group of career prosecutors who are given a mandate. That mandate is investigate broadly all crimes that government officials and their family members have committed over the past 4 years. Do it in the grand jury, do it honestly, ethically, aggressively, and apolitically, and then let's see where the evidence shakes out and what charges the grand jurors believe should be brought. And that's what I envision the Trump Crimes Commission to be.
There are so many different crimes that have been committed, and you are notorious for keeping handwritten longhand notes on legal pads and old filing cabinets and so on. And surprisingly, even worse, using ink quill, which I think is
there's today's.
Very impressive. So the point, though, is that you've been keeping track of logging all of these crimes for years. I'm sure others have as well. Organizations like Crew, which just sued Trump for emoluments, and the Supreme Court just threw out. You had a great video explaining that, which was important to understand. But I worry, and I wonder if you worry, that there has been so many different types of crimes committed that they've been forgotten, that they're gone, that they will never be prosecuted because there's just such a flood of them. Is that a concern, or is it just you pick the ones that have the most evidence, that have the most possibility of them being prosecuted, and you go for them?
That's a great question, because on the one hand, people will say there are too many crimes by government officials to wrap our arms around. My opinion as a career prosecutor is there are too many crimes by government officials not to wrap our arms around, because the American people deserve justice for what has been done to them over the past 4 years. But I do worry because it's a lot of crimes. And it's interesting because, his, icing on his criminal cake was inspiring an insurrection, right? So I don't know. One of two things will happen as a result of the Department of Justice now focusing on the investigation into the insurrection at the Capitol. Either that will act as a catalyst to make sure that they hold him accountable for everything, or it will be such an enormous undertaking that they will let everything else go and focus only on the overthrow of the government, which is no small potatoes as criminal charges go. I don't know how it's going to shake out, but I maintain you have to try to hold him accountable for everything. Now, you can only confine a man for but one life. And I went after killers who might have 5 bodies to their credit, but I went for the low-hanging fruit murders. Why? Because the murder that was easiest to prove, most readily provable, then if I can bang a murderer out for 30 years in prison, well, then I don't have to worry so much about the safety of the community, and I can keep working those other murderers, but once the killer has been incapacitated. I think with Trump, it's the same thing. There's so many crimes. Maybe you go for a couple of the marquee crimes where the evidence is really strong, and you let go other crimes like witness tampering of Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch and obstructing congressional inquiries by telling all of your executive branch officials not to comply with lawfully issued congressional subpoenas. But I don't know exactly how it's going to shake out.
Let's talk about the insurrection and that crime. Oh, wait, before I ask you that, did you ever not prosecute a murderer because it would be too divisive for the community?
I never took that approach as a prosecutor, nor did I ever tell the victims in the cases that the way we're going to achieve justice for you, for what's been done to you, and the way you're going to heal is if I decline to hold the perpetrator accountable, your attacker accountable. That's not the way to heal. That's the opposite of healing. It's the opposite of justice.
Right. So let's talk about the insurrection itself. Because I think there's a lot of focus on the president himself. But I think that everybody should be held responsible for. There's a lot more people who should be held responsible for this, for inciting it, for organizing it, for supporting it. If they were in Congress, if it wasn't so horrible and so scary, it's simply fascinating as to what happened. And people keep talking about, the impeachment trial and how that's different from another trial. And you have a great video about this as well, and how a criminal jury is sat, and how in this case, in this video, you talk about the witnesses here, and they're also jury members, have incentives and biases. But more importantly, they witnessed the crime themselves, and they are now prosecuting the crime. We saw 45 Republican senators today vote not to even, what was the legal wording of it, but to just not have the investigation, the impeachment, the trial, right? If I'm 45 Republican senators, only 5 voted for it. And so how do you look at who's responsible? How do you prosecute a legal case? Where are the crimes? Who are the criminals?
Yeah, you don't obtain justice in an impeachment hearing. An impeachment hearing is a show. It's an exclusively political event. We're going to hear a lot of speeches. Everybody's going to be playing to the camera or to their constituents. That's what politicians do. As you say, the jurors, the senators are witnesses, victims, and some of them are perpetrators because the Cruzes and the Hawleys incited this thing as sure as I'm sitting here. And to have those people sit in judgment on whether the president incited an insurrection is just laughable. So this is political theater. The only way you get to justice is by prosecuting these people in a court of law. So there are different categories of bad actors in this. Everybody who went into the Capitol, that's a federal offense. Entering federal property without permission, generally with the intent to commit an offense therein, even if it's disorderly conduct, destruction of property, minor assaults, that kind of thing. All those folks should be held accountable. Everybody who went into the Capitol that day. That's a massive undertaking.
It's one thing to trespass on federal land anytime. It's another thing to do it during a COVID regulation, because there's an extra danger there. I don't know if that means there's an extra crime,
but there's more common sense involved there. If I can't go into the Starbucks in my community, then I should have enough common sense to know I can't break into the fucking Capitol. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I mean, like, you would think they would know better just on COVID restrictions.
And Pete, they're breaking into the Capitol in order to sort of spark a rebellion, an overthrow of the incoming administration. So, this is such a dangerous, obscene crime to our democracy. So all of those folks need to be prosecuted. Now, I've been involved in protester cases, and I can tell you they're a bear to prosecute before I get to why Trump and Giuliani and Don Jr. also have criminal responsibility for this, because you have to prove in each and every case beyond a reasonable doubt with admissible evidence that this particular rioter, this particular insurrectionist of the 30,000 did the following things that constitute federal crimes. It's a challenge.
Yeah, but in your history of prosecuting those types of protesters that turned violent, that committed violence and weren't just nonviolent, maybe they vandalized something, were there video cameras and video evidence everywhere?
No, sometimes in the more recent protester cases. But I'm going to tell you, Pete, full disclosure, my office, the DC U.S. Attorney's Office, did the J22 or whatever they called it, protest prosecutions a few years ago. And we kind of went down in flames. The proof was very difficult. It was ugly. We lost cases. We ended up dismissing cases. And that wasn't about an overthrow of the federal government. So, it's a challenge, but it has to be done. So then when you go to Trump and Don Jr. and Giuliani, I mean, they incited this insurrection as sure as we are sitting here. I got a 30-second hypothetical that I've used to try to explain in layman's terms why Donald Trump is criminally responsible for that speech he gave and for the invitation via tweet that get to the Washington, D.C. on January 6th. It will be wild, right? I live across the street from two families, the Smiths and the Johnsons, right? I'm tight with the Smiths. We've always been good. I hate the Johnsons. We're like the Hatfields and the McCoys, or the Capulets and the Montagues.
Sounds like a boring neighborhood, by the way, the Smiths and the Johnsons. Go ahead.
We hate each other.
Right.
I'm going for universal names here.
Go ahead.
So I have the Smiths over to my house for dinner. I say, Smiths, bad news. The Johnsons, they broke into your house. They stole everything that is valuable to you. And you know what you got to do, Smith family? Get over to the Johnsons' house. Stop the steal. Be strong. Take back what's yours. And I launched them on the Johnson household. They break into the Johnsons' house, destroy their property, injure the Johnsons, and kill one of the Johnson family members. Now, add to the hypothetical that the Johnsons never stole anything from the Smiths. I lied to them. What have I done? I've used the Smith family as a weapon against the Johnsons, and I have shown corrupt intent, criminal mens rea in the process because I launched the attack from a platform of fraud. Give me 30 minutes in front of a jury, and Donald Trump and Giuliani and Don Jr. are guilty. Well, we just have to get into court and do it.
Is there any legal... can you use the evidence to the fact that so many of the people who broke into the Capitol have now told their lawyers in their own defense, as their defense, my president told me to do it. So in the president's defense, he's going to argue, listen, I didn't tell him to go in there. I told him to head over there. I didn't tell him to go break in and take Nancy Pelosi's computer. I didn't tell him to do that. That's his defense. He's saying, and if you look at the speech, you could come away with an interpretation that he didn't tell them to go break in and commit violence and kill anybody. But on the other hand, everybody is saying the president told me to do this, meaning this is what I heard. Not only the president, but his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who's an authority figure, and others. So can you use that evidence? Can you use those admissions from the actual insurrectionists, rioters, terrorists, whatever you want to call them, as a case against Trump when they say he told me to do it? I did it because the president told me to.
Yeah, the answer is generally yes, but it depends on the form those statements take. And this is an easy lift. You can't introduce out-of-court statements. So when these insurrectionists get locked up by the FBI, get read their Miranda rights, they waive their rights, and they agree to be interrogated, and they start making these statements, those statements are hearsay because they're out-of-court statements. But what we do is we enter into a plea agreement with these knuckleheads. We say, we'll give you a reduced charge or a reduced sentence if you testify at any future trial where you're called as a witness. Then once their butt is in the witness chair, it's not hearsay anymore because it's not an out-of-court statement. And they say, I reasonably interpreted what Trump and his son and his, lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, were telling us to do. I reasonably interpreted it as go attack the Capitol. And that was the message conveyed by these knuckleheads. We all heard it. And that was a reasonable interpretation. It was really the only reasonable interpretation. Go down there and stop the steal. How do you stop something that is underway in Congress? The only way to stop it is to bust the heck in and stop it. Bring your flex cuffs and your Kevlar vests. Come on now. This is not hard to prove.
Okay, so finally, I want to just ask you one final thing about all of the pardons. You spent a lot of time researching these pardons, and there's just so many of them. But I want to ask you about one, which I know you spent a lot of time on and talked about it on one of your recent videos on YouTube, which is Steve Bannon. I have a real special kind of hatred for him, having shared a studio with him at SiriusXM for over a year and getting to know him a little bit and just seeing him operate and behave. I find him to be one of the most reprehensible figures in American history. And he was recently indicted for grifting, for stealing money that people were giving to build the wall and using it for himself. In fact, he was apparently arrested on some Chinese billionaire's yacht. Nonetheless, I don't know exactly the ins and outs of that crime, but he's been pardoned. And we can speculate as to why Trump wanted to give him a pardon, a guy who he fired and then, criticized for a long time. Now they're friends again. What do you make of the Steve Bannon pardon and, any others that you wanted to pick? But specifically, that's the one that really has me fired up.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane that Steve Bannon would be stealing from Trump's base, pretending to build the wall while instead just, building Steve Bannon's wealth. And then for Donald Trump to pardon him leads me to conclude that Bannon has got dirt on Trump, which is why Trump pardoned him. It's not hard to read between the lines. So here is how it plays out legally. I haven't seen the text of the pardon itself. Some people said that, these pardons generally were so sloppily drafted that they might not even have the desired effect of making sure that the Southern District of New York prosecutors in the We Build a Wall case cannot prosecute Bannon. But let's assume the pardon covers that charge, so he can't be prosecuted for that. He can be prosecuted in the state of New York for financial crimes. And here's why. When you are stealing from a nonprofit and pocketing the money, I have never seen a financial crook who stole $100,000 and then reported it on his 1040 as income. That makes it a federal tax crime. And if you didn't report it on your federal taxes, you didn't report it on your state taxes, you've got state felony crimes. I think that because he's been pardoned federally, the New York state authorities will be all the more enthusiastic about bringing charges against him for the state crimes.
I hope you're right.
So Bannon will get got one way or the other.
Oh, I hope you're right. It's so hard for me to believe. And you brought up one other question when you're talking there. You think about like Bannon and all of the hours, I imagine, and you can speak to this as well as anybody can, all of the hours that went into the investigation and the indictment, the arrest, all of it into him. And many others that Trump pardoned as well. I mean, when the president of the United States pardons someone in that case, in these types of cases, it's throwing out so much of the work and the time and the resources that prosecutors, that investigators did. And for what? I mean, it's not like he'd served his time or anything. I mean, there was never even a trial. He's been pardoned and all. It must be so frustrating and really crush morale for those investigators, those prosecutors who were going after Biden, Bannon.
Hundreds of thousands of work hours and not just by FBI agents and prosecutors, but by paralegals and secretaries and support staff and victim specialists, because every crime that was pardoned, there was a victim. Even financial crimes have victims. All of those people were just spit on by Donald Trump. And I don't know if we talked about the Blackwater pardons, Pete, but I have
we did briefly. Yeah, you were fired up.
I have a special hatred for that because I don't think I was ever as proud of my office, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, as when we spent a decade investigating, indicting, and trying those Blackwater mass murderers and vindicating the rights of those Iraqi citizens for what Americans did to them on their soil. And for Donald Trump to sign 4 pardons and validate those war crimes is just a special kind of sin against the American people, against the Iraqi people, against humanity. That's something that we need to find a way to make right.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I'm so glad you brought that one up. And at least in that case, there was a trial. They were found guilty. They did serve some time. And then, of course, he pardoned them. And it is disgraceful. But it's just these pardons where there wasn't even a trial yet. There was no, I mean, justice matters is what you always say. But I wonder if like some justice is not good enough, but good. At least there's some justice in some of these crimes. And then in others, there's none. And that's reprehensible and demoralizing, I imagine.
Some justice is better than no justice. And, the other thing that...
By the way, that's my new show and moniker. It's called Some Justice. I think we're going to give you a real run for your money.
Yeah,
it's way more realistic.
Doesn't suck. That would be the... and then a footnote to the whole pardon discussion. Anytime you accept the pardon, you're confessing. The Supreme Court in 1915 said, if you accept the pardon because you don't have to, that's a confession of guilt. So guess what? When Bannon accepted a federal pardon, the state prosecutors ought to be able to use that as a confession in the state court case.
Which is why he probably didn't pardon his family and him or try.
He pardoned his family, Pete. Pocket pardons.
You think?
Pocket pardon. I will bet all the money in my very shallow bank account that he pardoned his family members and just has not told us about it until it becomes necessary, right?
How will we ever find out?
Jr., he has to pull out the pardon from Daddy. There is no legal requirement that for a presidential pardon to be valid, it must be publicly announced. No law, no constitutional provision.
There should be.
There should be, but there's not.
And there should also be limits to pardon power. I think most Americans agree now. The president has way too much.
It's time to try to legislate it. It's hard to legislate and curtail a power that's enumerated in the Constitution.
Right.
But there should at least be legislation about reporting requirements, right? We'll never know how far we can legislate to try to constrain a lawless president unless we try.
Glenn Kirschner, I love talking to you. I really appreciate you making time for me tonight, and I can't thank you enough. Keep up the great work. Appreciate it, pal.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.
All right, there he goes, Glenn Kirschner. Kirschner Report, Glenn Kirschner 2 on Twitter. Go subscribe to him on YouTube, on Patreon, on Facebook, on Twitter, on all of the things that are the things with the stuff. Do you use Linktree? Does anybody use Linktree? I see a lot of people using Linktree. I think I need to use Linktree. If I say Linktree one more time. That's a thing where all of your links, like all of your socials and everything, it's like a one-stop shop. I don't know what's happening. Okay, so let me, first of all, go tweet Glenn, please. Say, I love when you join Pete Dominic. That is always super helpful when you let listeners know how much you appreciate them joining me. Today I got pitched by a publicist a fee-free. I should find that email, but an unpaid guest. You don't have to pay the guest. And we've never paid guests in media unless it's a union show, unless it's television, generally speaking, in which you get pretty good money as a guest appearance on a talk show, like Real Time. I think I got like $800. But generally speaking, guests don't get paid in radio especially, and now in the new world of media. But I thought that was a hilarious pitch. Like, you don't have to pay this guest. Like, I wasn't... What guest? Who's paying guests? I'll be a guest. Pay me. Anyway. All right. So, very excited to introduce you to my next two guests. Speaking of publicists, this one came from a guy who sends me some good guest ideas from time to time. And I jumped at this one because
I mean, just the organization, Black Men in White Coats, is pretty self-explanatory, and I thought very interesting. And so this doctor in Texas has had a fascinating career and life, and the son of Nigerian American immigrants. And he started an initiative to try to get young Black men more interested in fields headed into careers into medicine, because statistics about Black men in medicine are not very good, not very representative. Black men make up 2% of all physicians in America. Black men have the lowest life expectancy in America. And Dr. Dale Okorodudu he's been on the Today Show, and he's written a couple of books, but Black Men in White Coats is his organization that he founded. He's a mentor in so many different ways. I had a fascinating conversation with him and the young man who he hired to make the documentary about the work to help promote the ideas and the initiatives of getting more Black men and Black women in medicine. But the disproportionate statistics were so glaring, and he had to ask why. And he's just a great guy, fascinating, super brilliant. He's written children's books. He's an assistant professor at UT Southwestern Medical Center, and he is also, of course, a physician in clinical practice at the Dallas VA Medical Center. He is a pulmonary and critical care specialist, and what a fascinating guy. He's got a wife and 3 kids, lives in Texas, as does Micah Autry, who is the filmmaker. He's a young filmmaker in Texas. Check out his profile. He currently owns Almy Motion Arts, which is a video production company. And if you live in North Texas, hire Micah Autry to do your filmmaking. But he is the director producer of this documentary, which you can go watch at bmwcmovie.com, bmwcmovie.com, Black Men in White Coats. Here is my conversation with Dr. Dale and Micah Autry. Micah, Dale, I am really happy to have you guys, to be in conversation with you guys. You think about what your day is going to be like and who you're going to talk to. And this is a pretty exciting thing for me to talk to a filmmaker and a doctor about a very important issue, Black men in white coats. Welcome to Stand Up, Micah, Dr. Dale. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, man. Super excited to chat with you.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
Dr. Okorodudu is how it's pronounced, yeah?
It is. Good job. Good job. Kudos.
To be clear, I rehearsed it 47 times before we got on. I was nailing it. And I was like, I'm going to mess it up as soon as I hit record. So I'm pretty excited right now. But people call you Dr. Dale generally because that's hard for some folks to get through, that 14-syllable last name.
14. I don't know it's quite 14. Yeah, that's what happens. People, they used to call me Dr. Oko, but now they call me Dr. Dale.
Well, I'm glad to have you joining me, and I'm really excited to talk about the issue that we're here to talk about. So, Black men in white coats. I want to hear, obviously, about why you're doing this and why you've been involved. And then, Mike, I'll come to you, talk about, the film and why you've got involved with it. But, Dr. Dale, what's the issue at hand? What is the concern that you have about medicine and who's wearing the jacket?
Well, I mean, if you look at COVID right now, that's the issue, right? That's the issue. So Black men in white coats, the idea is there's not enough Black male physicians in the field of medicine. Started back in 2013. Some reports came out and that kind of brought light to the issue, and we've been working on it since then. But ultimately, the basic premise of all this is my health impacts your health. Everybody's health impacts everybody's health. And in order for Black men to have the best health possible, you need to have Black male doctors who can think about what they need. So that's the bottom line, what it comes down to. My health impacts your health. Let's make sure we have doctors representing everybody.
Well, let's unpack that for a little bit. A lot of people might hear you say that and say, why does it matter, the ethnicity or gender or background in any way of the doctor and the patient? And there's a lot of good answers for that, I know, but what are yours?
So the first thing I'll say is, when we say we need more Black male doctors, that's not saying that a Black male doctor does a better job of taking care of a Black male patient than a white male doctor or a white woman doctor. That's not what we're saying. It comes down to this idea, kind of what they call cultural competency, being able to relate to people on certain levels. So that's one part of it, right? So one part of it might be that me as a Black male doctor, I can relate to Black patients better. That's one part, and I dare say that's the smaller part. Probably the bigger part is that patients may feel more comfortable with me. So this isn't just us making things up in medicine. We focus on evidence, so we do a lot of studies, and then we run the study, then we look at the data and the results. So this has been studied. So we know this from a scientific perspective that for a Black male patient, if they have a Black physician, they're more likely to listen to that physician's preventative care recommendations. So get the flu vaccine, get your sugars checked, get your cholesterol checked. They've studied that. We know that, that's done. That's in the books. So at the end of the day, a big part of it comes down to just trust, right? I trust you. I think you have my interest at hand.
That's it's fascinating, and so I think especially, do you think it's fair to say it's difficult for a white person to understand that because we've always been the majority, and if anything, we'll be discriminate against Black doctors of color. I mean, I hear that, by the way, all the time, that white patients are like, I don't want that lady, I don't want that guy, all the time because of race in specific. It's interesting when it comes down to like life or death. White people will often be a lot more honest about their more quiet racism. Normal day, they're like, well, no thanks, sir. And they're in the ER, they're like, not the Black doctor. Like, doesn't that kind of thing happen all the time and make it harder, I think, for white folks listening to even understand your mission here?
It does happen. I don't want to say all the time, but that definitely happens, right? So I can tell you, I could pull out a whole bunch of doctors who look like me. They can tell you stories like that, or tell you stories where the patient's like, you're my doctor. No way. Those things happen somewhat often. You asked a question about, is it hard for white people to understand this? And I don't know. I hate getting in the position of saying what's difficult for other people. So, with Black men and white coats, we never want to come across as saying, oh, white people can't understand this plight. White people can't help. I'm not that guy, right? I'm the guy who says, let's figure this out together. If you can't understand it, I want to help you understand it. If you disagree, hey, let's chat, and I'll try to convince you.
Well, I'll be that guy in this conversation.
You can be that guy.
Because I can be, and I appreciate that answer. It's a really good answer. And I also think that in your campaign, you talked about, I want to get Donald Trump's attention. Anybody that wants to hear this, that wants to help us, and that might surprise some people, but that's exactly, based on your last answer, you're looking for people to understand and to create awareness around this subject, around this issue, and share your experience to help create more opportunity for young Black men to consider medicine, which I think is noble and effective, but it's not going to be, I suppose, if you're going to pick sides or choose who's involved in on the team and in this mission.
Yeah, exactly. That's 100% correct. Right. So we want everybody who wants to help to be on the team. I'll tell you, one of my greatest mentors, Mike is starting to know him well. He's a white gentleman by the name of John Boaz, right? It's one of my greatest mentors right now. And another one of my greatest mentors, unfortunately, just died recently. He's a white gentleman. He was battling cancer. Both of them are associated with the film, and both of them are real, legitimate mentors. And they have as much passion for this problem as anybody I've ever seen.
That's interesting, and I'm sorry for your loss. Micah, you're the director of this film, and I think it's really impressive and obviously great for you to be working on. But how do you come to this? You generally do, it seems like, a lot of commercial work in Texas. Where did you meet Dr. Dale, and how did you decide to get involved with this film?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I did a lot of corporate work, still do a lot of corporate work. If you're a sports fan, it's kind of like the minor leagues. You got to work your way up. And so that's kind of how I started getting those competencies and those skills. And that's how Dale noticed us, myself and my production firm, was through that corporate work. He had went online and he was looking for someone that can understand the plight and the problem that we're going through to be able to convey that message, right? And so as a Black male myself, I'm not just making a film. I'm talking about my life, my brother's life, my potential kid's life, right? And so I believe that's why Dale wanted to get me involved. And I love making films. I love making visuals. And if I can make something that's going to have an impact, then that's even, just the icing on the cake.
I know there's a lot of research on this, but I'll stick to anecdotes and conversations I've had with Black men when it comes to whether you're a filmmaker or a physician or any other job or career industry. So often it would seem to me, again, these are anecdotes from Black men I've talked to, that a lot of the opportunities come in what you see available to you. When you see people that look like you doing this or doing that, you think, well, then that's what I should or can do. And I'm not sure how many other Black filmmakers there are or have been in your life,
Micah, or how many black physicians that there were in your life growing up. But Dr. Dale, I know that mentorship and role modeling is one of the most important qualities for you. So to you first, how important is it to see people in certain jobs and careers that look like you?
It's huge. You know, I'll take it outside of medicine a little bit.
Sure.
Some months ago, we were sitting down having dinner, and my 7-year-old, we're talking about being president or something. I forgot what it was, but I brought up the idea of him being president. He's like, Daddy, I can't be president. I'm black, right? So he thought the black people couldn't be president because everybody he had seen, you know, he doesn't comprehend Obama yet because he's young, but, you know, he sees Trump in office and all those people. So he thought that black people couldn't be president, right? So then we had to say, son, no, you can be president. And now it's on a constant basis reiterating, you can be president. So he's in that phase of you can't be what you can't see. He couldn't see it, so he didn't think he could be it. So it's the same thing for any field, just like you said, Pete. And medicine, that's definitely huge in medicine because you think about a lot of our young black boys and, you know, our young black girls. Also, I want to make sure black men in white coats, when we talk about that, we're very inclusive. We do a lot of our work for the young girls as well. A lot of them, you know, a lot of them don't even have doctors, you know, let alone having black doctors, right? Somebody in the film makes that statement that she didn't even have a doctor till she was 16.
Wow.
Let alone a black doctor.
Wow. Well, you just, you know, kind of minimize my entire thing by saying you can't be what you can't see, which I love. But yeah. Micah, same question to you about being a filmmaker. Did you see anybody like you, that looked like you, that seemed like you could relate to growing up as a mentor that you knew? Did you see a lot of black filmmakers? And what do you think of the same question about seeing somebody do what you want to do?
Yeah, so I'll have a two-part answer. The first thing, when it comes to seeing blacks in creative space, I've got into film and video because my brother was a musician. And so a lot of black men, just people of color, we do a lot of things in the arts, but we don't do a lot of things in STEM. So to bring it back to medicine, I didn't meet a black doctor until I was a senior in college, and I was doing a short film over him. And after I met him and I met Dale and I meet all these black doctors, I'm a 25-year-old man. I'm like, interesting. Medicine might have been something I would have pursued if I had met a black doctor when I was 12. And that's why it's all about exposure for these young black boys. You can't be what you can't see. I literally never met or shook the hand of a black male doctor until I was a senior in college. I think if I had met someone earlier, my trajectory and my profession would have changed, because I look at Dale and these guys now and I'm like, that's pretty cool.
That's a really very interesting answer. I'm sure you've heard things like that a lot, Dr. Dale. Why did you've been working on this initiative for a while now. Why the documentary Black Men in White Coats? Why did you want to do this documentary?
Yeah, so, I tell people, they say, how long have you been doing this documentary? I tell them we've been working on this in my mind for like 8-9 years now, right? It's been something that I've been planning in my mind and tried to do in a variety of ways before. But, got to the point where we just looked around and we said, things aren't changing, and understanding that we're in a social age, right? Everything's about video, and people want to see content. Yeah, we said we've got an answer for it. Let's do it now. And we would have done it earlier. I just didn't have the resources. I was in my training and such, but I got to a point in life where I was able. Unfortunately, I found, Micah and his team who were able to bring it to life.
Micah, in making this film, what did you learn, and what do you hope to teach viewers, share with viewers?
Yeah, so what I learned is a lot. Like, I don't even know if I can put it into a sentence what I've learned, but I think just learning about those health disparities. I know the beginning of the film starts with a quote from MLK that says the greatest injustice of all is the injustice in healthcare. And just to know that, hey, black men are murdered or lose their lives in other avenues, whether that's homicide or brutality, but to know that we're losing our lives in hospitals too, just because of disparities is a big deal. And so what I wanted to come out of this film is obviously to educate people on this topic. It's a very intellectual film, and me and Dale created it that way on purpose. But I think the biggest thing is that you can't be what you can't see. We want to empower young black boys and girls to feel empowered, that they can become a black man or a black woman in a white coat, but also just to have professional success in general, right? And so I think that's our big thing, is just to empower people with this message and with this film.
It's so interesting, this phrase, you can't be what you can't see. I was talking to a really successful black female lawyer who joins me a lot, named Midwin Charles. She's awesome. And I asked her, who are your role models? Why did you want to go into law? And she said Blair Underwood's role on LA Law growing up. It was the only black lawyer she saw. And I was like, wow, yeah. And the same, I probably, unfortunately, is true of medicine and certain other industries where you don't see any people of color from your life in your community. You never meet them, but you see them on TV. And in that case, I think that's what's great about this documentary, that every young black boy and girl and every community in the country can see you. And it's a documentary. It's not, a show on TV. But what do you, Dr. Dale, do when you speak to young black folks about medicine? Is there a trick? Is there a way in to capture their attention and to convince them? Because as I'm watching the film, I'm thinking, I don't know if black kids are any different than white kids when it comes to like gore and blood and medicine stuff. Like, I feel like that's cross-cultural, and I don't know if you talk differently to different ethnicities about such things. How do you convince young people to even listen to you if there's that trigger of, no thanks, I don't like blood and vomit, etc.?
Well, they might not like blood, but I'll tell you what's kind of cool about what we do at Black Men and White Coats is we start pretty early. So a lot of our events, it's not just a film, right? We have youth summits, I write books, all sorts of, write kids books and all sorts of stuff. So we target children from an early age. So, the age that we use is 8 years old. So 8 years old, I'm not talking to them about blood and gore. I'm talking to them about science. I'm talking to them about look how cool the heart works, right? So we're drawing the fun, the cool parts in. And when they get older, we see if they like the blood or not. But let's get them while they're young with the cool aspect. Everybody likes the way the heart pumps, Everybody likes that.
All right, fine. But listen, straight up, do you ever get grossed out at this point in your career? Does anything ever be like, oh God, I gotta get out of here?
only thing that really grosses me out is there's certain GI, certain gastrointestinal infections you can get to make the whole place smell like, ugh. That's it. That I'm just grossed out because of the smell sometimes. But
man, you are, when I'm researching you and learning about you, you're also a children's book author. You're a mentor and a physician. And then I see you're married with 3 kids.
Yeah, that's the best part. I mean,
how do you get anything done well? How do you do so much in your life effectively?
You call the consult first. That's I was talking to my wife about this the other day. Okay, hey, people pay me for this. I'm giving you guys some gold right now. All right, I'm giving you guys some real nice gold here.
Yes,
you got to call the consults first. So I was telling my wife, you don't ever want to be the one to stop in the cogwheel. So if there's anything, it's all about team. It's not about do you know the answer. It's about do you know the person who knows the answer, right? And then you call the consult first. What that means is I'm not going to slow Micah down from doing his work. So I check in with, and Micah will probably tell you, I'm sure he got annoyed with me checking in so much, but I check in to make sure he's got everything he needs before I start doing my day's work, right? So I call the consults, make sure the team members are working first, and then I go do my stuff. So that way things are happening across the clock and I'm not ever slowing anything down.
Tell me about the lady on the airplane who was so insulting and critical of you based on the way that you talked and the way that you dressed. This is a story that you often share, and I think it's important, interesting, and instructive.
Pete, I just gained so much respect from you over these past few minutes. I don't think, I've done not a million interviews, but I've done quite a bit of interviews, and I don't think anybody has ever researched and done their homework as good as you have. So that's, first of all, kudos to that, man. You know everything about me. It's kind of creepy. But
I'm actually with your family right now, and this answer better be good or you'll never see them again. So, I appreciate that, and sorry for the joke. Go ahead.
No. Let me call my wife real fast. Hold on. No. So,
Let me check my wife. Yeah. Let me check my family.
It's back when I was in college. So I went to school in Missouri, and I grew up outside of Houston. So I would go to St. Louis and fly home to Houston over the break. So I went to St. Louis, flying home on the airport, and I was dressed like people who looked like me dressed back in the days, right? Back in the early 2000s, it's big baggy clothes. I got big baggy sweats, and I got a hoodie. I still wear a hoodie. Michael will tell you every time he sees me, I'm probably wearing a hoodie,
all the time.
Yeah. So I'm wearing that stuff, and I get on the plane, and I'm sitting down, and I'm just doing my business with my laptop or something, and she just looks at me like, "Why do you dress like that? Do you think you're cool? Oh, yo, doggy. And I just said, "No, ma'am, I'm sorry. That's just the way I dress." "Why do you talk like that?" "Talk like what?" "Oh, doggy, you think you're cool?" And she just went on berating me for the whole flight, and then. At one point she talks about, do you think you're going to be successful, behaving like this in life? And that got me thinking, like, is this what people think when they see, people who look like me? And she didn't know. I just got accepted to med school. I made straight A's in college, and she had no idea who she was sitting next to, but just based only on what I was wearing and maybe the maybe the little accent, or I don't know how I sound. She thought it was okay to just start criticizing me.
What'd you say to her? How'd you handle that?
I didn't bother saying anything to her. I just said, this is just who I am, the way I dress, and I left her there. Let her talk. It's like, don't bother me. Ignorance, that's on her, not me.
You didn't feel the need to correct her on any of it?
I didn't. In retrospect, now that you're saying, I wonder if I should have. But up until this point in life,
no, I don't think you should have. That's not why I'm saying it. I'm just projecting my own like what I would have done is borderline violent. I would scream. I'll scream at people. I never do anything violent because I'm a small man. But I mean, I would get very upset and indignant, and I would be yelling and screaming. And well, back to you. Why did that encounter matter in your life?
It mattered because what it did for me, it made me realize how the way somebody looks at you can completely hinder you and hamper you. And when people tell you you're not going to be successful, how it can impact you. For me, it was okay because fortunately, I grew up, both my parents, high expectations for us, things of that sort, right? My parents, Nigerian immigrants and things. So, the immigrant type of mentality. And she's telling me this after I already made straight A's, right, in college, and I got into medical school. So in my head, I'm like, she's completely clueless. So it didn't faze me. But imagine had I been younger, or imagine she would have got me at a phase in my life where I wasn't quite as solidified and mature. That could have really impacted me. I could have really started thinking these things like, wow, maybe I'm not going to be successful. Maybe I should change the way I dress, right? Maybe I should change those things. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I think that some people miss code switching, which everybody does.
Yeah,
everybody does. I think it's used often with minorities because there's such a switch there. Whereas as a white guy, I don't have to switch that much, but I talk differently to my parents and I do my kids a little bit differently. And to different people from different backgrounds and different, I suppose, educations and so on. But I think black folks have to do that a lot more. And it's like, listen, I was talking to my buddy on the phone. That's what you heard. But when I'm talking to you here on the airplane, I'm talking in a completely different way because I'm making assumptions about how you communicate. Micah, so the same question for you, just as a black man, have you ever had an experience like Dale is talking about, where someone just confronted you with, why do you act this way? Why do you talk this way? Is that kind of aberrant?
So I'm a little younger than Dale, and I feel like, especially in these social kind of turbulent times, people are a little bit more cautious about speaking their mind.
Yeah.
Kind of, right? It's a caveat by that because some people are really speaking their minds. But what I have learned is that if you can make yourself indispensable, you can code switch less, right? So when I have the portfolio, the work ethic, and the resume and background to back up the work that I do, you can come in and be more yourself. So I'm a guy that likes to wear hoodies and sneakers. They'll know I'm a sneaker guy. I have a lot of these corporate clients and I'm going into their corporate office. They have their $400 three-piece suit on. I have my sneakers on, and we can be at the same table discussing this project because they know the resume and they know what value I bring to them. And so you become kind of indispensable. And at that point, you can code switch a little less.
Yeah, that's a great point, except for you, that's not something that you get to do at the grocery store on the airplane, the way that Dale is. Like, they don't know, like, if it's your client, if it's someone that knows you a little bit, they're like, this guy's a very successful filmmaker, and, I don't care about anything else. I'm not going to make any assumptions, and certainly the same could be true of Dr. Dale, but it seems like these everyday interactions are really important. All right, I'm almost out of time here, and Dr. Dale has, I'm sure, both of you, a big, busy day. But congratulations on this documentary, Black Men in White Coats. What do you hope that we take away from it? And, I think it's super important that black folks see this, especially young black children, so that they can, be what they see. But I also think it's important that white audiences see this for reasons that I could tell you. But I wonder what both of you think about different audiences seeing and interpreting this documentary and this whole mission, Dr. Dale.
So somebody asked us this question recently, and I'm gonna go with what Micah was saying, and Micah can add to it. This is my answer from now on, Micah.
That's fine.
is empowerment. This idea of making sure everybody who watches it is empowered to do something, right? It's not just empowering the kids, not just empowering the parents, not just black, white. It's every single person who watches this film should understand that they have a role. Yeah, that's one thing. Other thing I'll say, which is a little bit off topic, people, but I do want to mention this. So we always talk about black men in white coat, black men in white coat, white coat, white coat.
I did see that.
Everything we do, what the white coat part just really means what is your success, right? Mm-hmm. So it's engineering, law, filmmaking. The white coat just means that's your goal. So when I'm talking about black men in white coats, yeah, I want you guys to go into medicine. But, most of what I spend my time doing is teaching people how to be leaders and things of that sort, how to chase your goals, success, and get that. So it's like, what is your white coat? So when you watch this film, even if you don't want to be a doctor, because certainly more people are going to watch this that aren't going to become doctors and who will, are you empowered to go get your white coat, right? That's what it is at the end of the day. And how can you contribute to making somebody else's life better?
That's I'm so glad that you mentioned that. That's a really important point. It's about, different industries, different careers that you can excel in. That maybe you didn't think you could, but why does it have to be a white coat? Why has it got to be white? Why does it have to be white collar, blue collar, or what?
I'll tell you why the white coat is important, though. I would, in my opinion, at least, same reason why the white sheets are important in a hotel. You want to make sure it's not dirty when they come into you, right? I don't want to see the blood.
Great point. I never thought about either one of those, and partially because I'm a filthy person. But that is. Micah, same question for you about what you want people to hear and see and take away from your film. And congratulations on it. I think this is going to really, mean a lot for you as a filmmaker too. Black men in white coats. What do you hope people take away? Yeah, so I'm going to actually steal Dale's answer a little bit. Yeah, we want to empower people to do something, but we actually want to, have change, whether that's in the medical school admissions process. We have almost all the medical schools in the country going to be screening this film. And so we actually want to make some changes in the processes and actually get more black men into medical school. So I think that's a huge thing for us, as well as empowerment for the younger generation. Gentlemen, congratulations. I'm sure that, it's easy to watch a film and to have a conversation like ours and just think that it just happened. But it's clear that you guys have been working on this for a very long time, really, really hard. So it's so important that people hopefully listen to the interview or see a trailer and then go watch it and then go do something. Take action somehow, some way. Black men in white coats. Dr. Dale Okorodudu, it's so great to talk to you. And Micah, thank you so much for joining me, and congratulations on the film, Micah Autry. And all the links for both these guys in the film are in today's show notes. But is there any way we can tell them, just in case they don't go to show notes, where they can see the film?
You can get it bmwcmovie.com, bmwcmovie.com, and have all the information there.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there they go, Dr. Dale Okorodudu. Okorodudu. Damn it. Well, they're gone now. I'm recording this after they're gone, so it doesn't matter as much because he's not hopefully listening to this. But Dr. Dale Okorodudu and Micah Autry, all the information is in the show notes for today's episode, but I hope that you will check that out, check that film out, and think about the issue and what a great resource Dr. Dale is on this issue. And I look forward to talking to him again. That was a real fun interview. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Look forward to doing it and hope that you will watch their film. And go to blackmeninwhitecoats.org, blackmeninwhitecoats.org to learn more. That is it for me today. I will see you tomorrow at the Zoom Hangout. If you're a subscriber to the stand-up community, if you're not, sign up now. What are you doing? What are you doing? Come hang out with us. It's awesome. Go to patreon.com/PeteDominic or the paid subscription link in the show notes. I think tomorrow, I'm planning tomorrow to record an interview with both Wajahat Ali and Jared Yates Sexton at the same time, so you don't want to miss that. Will be tomorrow, and I will talk to you then. I love you. You're not alone. Hang out with us on the Discord platform anytime. Join us there 24/7, and I'll talk to you tomorrow right here on Stand Up. Tell your friends. Take it away, John Carroll. John Carroll wrote and performed this music for the show. I love this guy, and John, let's set a time to do an interview. He's led a fascinating life as a very talented musician. Take it away, Johnny. Let the brave meet the challenge, let the meek weak flee. Oh, you better stand up, stand up.
up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand up.
And now, James Baldwin discussing racism with Dick Cavett on The Dick Cavett Show in May of 1969.
Mr. Baldwin, I'm sure you still meet the remark that, what are the Negroes, why aren't they optimistic? And I apologize and preface this by the phrase, the Negroes, because it lumps together an awful lot of people. You and Floyd McKissick and Madam Clayton Powell and Hattie McDaniel and Jackie Robinson, and it's impossible, I suppose, to... But for want of a better phrase, if you'll allow me, they say, but it's getting so much better. There are Negro mayors. There's Negroes in all of sports. There are Negroes in politics. They're even accorded the ultimate accolade of being in television commercials now. And, I'm glad you're smiling. Is it at once getting much better and still hopeless?
Well, I don't think there's much hope for it, to tell you the truth. As long as people are using this peculiar language. It's what I was trying to convey before when I said that it's not a question of what happens to the Negro here, or to the black man here. That's a very vivid question for me, But the real question is what's going to happen to this country. I have to repeat that. Now, if Negroes don't seem to be very optimistic, it's not because they suddenly all changed from happy, shiftless, dancing darkies down on the levee, picking all that cotton and singing praises to the master. They've not changed at all. They never were optimistic. All one's got to do is listen to Swing Low Sweet Chariot and ask yourself what that song's about. Or try to really listen to what Ray Charles is really telling you. We have lived under these intolerable conditions for how many years? Nearly 400 years. We have evolved a certain kind of style to meet it, and a lot of that has been involved with the lies we had to tell to you, and the lies we had to tell to you, this compounds the disaster you believe because you wanted to believe it. But obviously you knew, every white man knows, that he would not himself, lying track for nothing. He would not himself allow his child to be sold from him as though the child were a mule. He would not himself allow himself not to have the autonomy of his own house and his own woman. He would not himself pick all that cotton and carry it to market just because he loved white people. We all know that. And the word Negro in this country really is designed finally to disguise the fact that one is talking about another man, a man like you, who wants what you want. And insofar as the American Republic wants to think there has been progress, they overlook one very simple thing. I don't want to be given anything by you. I just want you to leave me alone so I can do it myself. And it also overlooks another very important thing. Perhaps I don't think that this republic is a summit of human civilization. Perhaps I don't want to become like Ronald Reagan or like the president of General Motors. Perhaps I have another sense of life, which in fact my situation here has forced me to trust. And perhaps I know more about you and your institutions than you know about me. And perhaps I have a judgment on them. Perhaps I don't want what you think I want. And if there's nothing you can give me, perhaps there is something that I can give you.